recording again. It's my pleasure to introduce Al and Bev Webster. I think I first met you when you lived across the other side of Dora Creek, and your son Michael was in his second or third year at college, and soon after that you went to work in a remote area. I'm just wondering if you could both come forward and maybe just give us a quick rundown of your career, your background, and where it is that you've just come back from, and then I'd like you to initiate the conversation. So these guys are experienced teachers. I can just sit down and be quiet for a while.
That's my class, some of my senior students.
All
They're
right.
some of my beloved senior students.
Okay, so in a nutshell, we drifted into living and working in remote Aboriginal communities. We had been working in Papua New Guinea, and a position was advertised at Karalundi.
Which he applied for on my behalf, and I didn't know till I was rang up for the job interview. So that was a surprise for me.
Anyway, the business manager that I knew in Papua New Guinea was also the business manager at Karalundi, and he said, "It's fantastic, come." So we packed our bags and went to Karalundi, and we were dawn parents there for 1 year. Very, very hard, long hours. And at the end of our contract, we said, or at least I did anyway, I'm not ready to go back to mainstream yet. I want a bit more. So we had been from Karalundi going up to Warburton. I don't know if you know West Australia at all. Warburton in WA, Warburton Mission. So we knew some of those students, and I applied for teaching in the WA education, in remote teaching, and luckily got Warburton. So we stayed there for 3 years, and then took some time out, went to Canberra,
Death of our grandchild.
Queanbeyan for 2 years. Came back for 6 years and were in Blackstone, which is also in Nunandara lands. And then WA had this policy that if you're there so many years, you have to go into mainstream for 2 years, and I'm thinking, I don't really want to go to mainstream. So I resigned from WA and got picked up in the Northern Territory at Alpara. Now, do you want to go and say something, or do you want to go have a quick look at this map?
It's a lot of communities, 16, and when you've left out here, ENGWERB and Noongar. The names are really hard to say, and even the name of the clinic, which we've just put clinic, I can't say, okay? It's just so many sounds. They don't have the same number of letters in the alphabet. They miss out a lot of the letters, and when you have combinations of letters, you look at it and you think, how in the hell did they get that sound from those 2 letters? Because you just can't make it out. So the names, we have worked, my husband worked here, we know everyone from this community. Opera School
That's the high school.
Yeah, it's a high school, and we actually take students from all these communities. So every morning, the teachers and sometimes the local community members that work for the school, like the groundsmen, etc., if they've got current licences and haven't lost them due to drunk driving or something, we drive out, and it's an hour or so every morning picking up students. We bring them back to school. The first thing we do is they always have breakfast. We provide breakfast, we provide lunch for them every day. Oh, there's another one now in Mulgable that my husband and I also work out. And then at the end of the school day, you take them all home again. So your day is very long. If you're a homelands teacher, when we worked at Soapy Ball, we would leave just after 7:30, 20 to 8 in the morning, and we'd go around, pick up in Alpera, and then we'd come out here to Mosquito and Soakage and take them to Soapy Ball. Soapy Ball kids would walk there, and then sometimes we'd have to do 2 trips. In the afternoon, we'd have to wait for the high school bus to bring the high school students, so they got there an hour after we finished school. We'd have the students from here and here still waiting for us to go home. So the high school would come, they'd pick up some students, take to here, and in the meantime my husband might have done 2 trips out to Mosquito to drop students off. You have a really close relationship with the students and the community and the people. It's a total different way of life. It's a total different way of teaching. Even from here, the students here are different to the students that are in the country towns, anywhere in Australia. They're different to the mainstream city kids that are Indigenous kids. The remote community kids are the nicest to work for. They are amazing. If you accept them and you're kind to them and they know that you're genuine, they'll do anything to please you. They come to school basically to please you. They like education, no, but they can't see a point of that. But they come just to please you because they like you and they want to make you happy. So that's the reason they come to school, and also the food.
Let me digress back. This is roughly Alice Springs and Darwin Way up there. Some of you know the Plenty Highway that comes out in Bullia and then Winton in Queensland. So this is all tar to here. Then you go on dirt, and we're 250 kilometres away from Alice Springs with 150 of dirt. And up to the north is the Barkly Highway, goes through to Mount Isa. This is the Sandover, which is, there is a river, Sandover River, and the Sandover Highway. And so this area here, roughly, is the Yawara people, the speaking people. And Chancey Peach, the burden of his story, or the burden of his presentation was that these people should be allowed to stay on their homelands. Now, you may not be aware, but there is political pressure to get them off the homelands and to centralise them in bigger and bigger communities.
It's so expensive for the government to care for these communities. It's really expensive.
Yeah.
But the clinic, not government run, not government sponsored, it's totally private sponsor. The person who's in charge of the clinic, all she does all day is sit on the phone and get funds for the clinic. And it's a fantastic clinic. They are getting their own dialysis unit there with 4 chairs, which, you know, even Alice Springs have only got about 10 chairs. In the main hospital in Alice Springs, well, we're going to have a 4-chair clinic here. They've got a men's shed, they've got a women's shed, they've got second-hand clothing thing. I mean, we as white fellas went there all the time. Now, we got injections for nothing. If they were injecting the community, oh, well, you might as well have it too, which we did, because they had, what was it that went through out? Meningitis went through. No, not meningitis, what was it? I've forgotten. Something went through, so we'd have all the shots for it.
Yeah. Okay, just on that thought of the Peachy,
then we do the question.
Chancey Peach was emphasising when Utopia was established, it had been two different stations came together. So Utopia Homelands and another one over here, I'm not sure of the name. So this came together in the late 60s, early 70s. And the decision that they made was to have these dispersed pattern. It's fairly unique because the service centre is here, the clinic is up here, the airstrip is there, but as you can see, it's spread out. This is the only shop. So every time folk in any other place want food or need to buy something, they've got to travel down to here. It's a service centre with power and water. There is a shop, there's
we've got soul
oval, and a basketball court. Bachelor had a centre there for a little bit, a high school, and as Bert was saying, this is the high school that's serviced by, although the Rocha people don't really come down there, Mulga Ball, which is further down there, is independent as well. It's a dispersed pattern which has its advantages and its disadvantages. In terms of service provision, it's a poor solution. It's very expensive. We've got something like 15 vehicles. Every morning we scatter in every direction, picking up students from various places and taking them to one of the schools. Housing, you name it, it's very expensive. However, the advantage is, and it's my belief that this is a better system, because as I say, we've worked in Warburton, we've worked in Nunandara and Blackstone and other places. The family structures are still largely intact.
And each one of those are family groups. Okay, each one of these community family groups. In Warburton, they brought them in together with almost blood running in the streets, because certain families aren't supposed to mix with certain families. So that has solved that problem. And they talked about the poor health 12 months previously, when they looked at Indigenous health throughout the Northern Territory. Utopia area has the better health. We have no sniffing, do we, Al?
No.
Which is the only communities that we know of with no sniffing. We've worked in all of them, a number of them, they've all got sniffing. Bit of marijuana coming in of late, but the families jump on that really quickly, and the young men or the women are taken out bush and dealt without push. Very culturally strong, the same as Warburton and Blackstone. The culture is really strong. They do law business the same. In my class, the one that you saw with those fellas, the fellas were sitting there in little groups, because in my classroom, the senior classroom, girls sit one side, the fellas the other. And when it comes to the meals, when you go through law, your mum is not your mum anymore. That's to stop her interfering in your life. You then are given what they call a mimi, which is another stand-in mum. So if you want something, your mum wants something from you as a young man, she has to go through the mimi, and the mimi will talk to you, and then you pass it back to the mimi and back to the mum. So in my classroom, fellas sat one side, girls sat one side. Fellas would come in first, sit down, then the girls would come in. Or the next day the girls would come in, and then the fellas. Even at lunchtime and lining up, some of the staff weren't allowed to go to the kitchen to get their food where it was served, because that person might be their mimi, so they're not allowed to talk to them. Because they're mimi wrong way, on the other side of the family, okay? Not on their side, on the other side. So they couldn't talk to them. So you've got to be aware of all these cultural differences, huge cultural differences within the communities.
Just to finish on that notion of the scattered versus centralised settlement pattern, in my view, the family structures are still intact. Parents still have authority, and because of that, there's very low levels of delinquency. There is no sniffing. Sniffing is a huge problem in Nunandara. Even little kids walking around with a tin can of petrol and sniffing. Here, I have not seen, we were there for 8.5 years, no sniffing. So, you've got to balance everything out, service provision against maintaining family structures and keeping the community, as Bev said, keeping the cultures alive. They are very, very cultural. And this has its downsides as far as education are concerned, because every time someone passes away and you form a sorry camp, then all the families will go to that bush. They have a settlement in the bush where they live, and they may stay there for several days, or even up to several weeks, where the kids can't go to school. Same with law business. Law business takes up a lot of time.
6 weeks minimum.
So people are in the bush, the young men get
for 6 weeks.
Yeah, young men get initiated, but they can come back to school. Unlike Nunandara, when they go through law in Nunandara, they can't come back to school. But in Utopia, they can come back to school again, but 6 weeks are gone, or more, or maybe more.
Usually.
And footy. The big passion is footy. Now, footy is supposed to be Saturday and Sunday, so they rush over to the footy. But rarely does it work out like that. It usually starts, the Saturday, Sunday goes on, stretches into Monday and Tuesday, before the students come back.
Wednesday, they've got to go Thursday to get there in time to get the good camping places. So, it's a total different existence. And we can laugh at it, but when we had the footy matches in Alpera, where did we run the schools? Down at the Oval.
Yeah.
Everything was run at the Oval. And the kids would play the game and they'd run up, we'd do a bit of teaching, learning, then off go the game, we'd work with another group, and we'd feed the parents. That's the way it is. We adapt the education, fit it in. Why? We don't want them to lose their culture. We cultures in the world in Australia. And most of you guys are unaware of it and know so little about them. And they're an amazing mob of people. I mean, I'll tell you just one little thing. I'll tell you one little story that shows you their culture. When we lived in Nunandara land, we lived at Blackstone, Milliadara, which is 80, 90 k's from the tri-state border of WA, Northern Territory and South Australia. We were really close to the students. We taught high school there. And our students came and said, Jared came and said to his family, oh, we've got to go away, there's been a death. We're going to Dundundara. We said, okay, when you're coming back? They said, well, we're going on Friday, so we'll be back by Wednesday. Wednesday come, nobody came back. And the kids said, oh, they left this morning, they should be back today. And I said, okay, fine. And then at about 8 o'clock at night, our bedroom was on the veranda, unfortunately, the bedroom window, so they rattled it on the window and said, they're not coming back today. They're not going to be back for school tomorrow. I said, why? Oh, they've broken down, they've got a puncher. I said, you sure? Yeah, they've got a puncher and their spare's flat. How do you know that? Oh, we know. No telephones, nobody coming through and telling them. They have this telepathy between each other. And I used to laugh at it, but I don't anymore. Anyway, the next day, they're not coming still because nobody's come to help them. You sure? Yep, they won't be here today either, W. Okay, fine. But they hope to be back tomorrow. Okay, the next day. W, they've started out, they've fixed it, they've put the windgrass in the tyre because nobody helped them, nobody came, so they put windgrass in the tyre, but the tyre's disintegrated. They're not going to be here today, W. How do you know that? Oh, we know. Friday morning they said, oh, W, they're going to be back at lunchtime today. At lunchtime we thought, oh, that can't be right. You know, how would you know they're going to be at lunchtime? No telephones, no phone boxes, no cars going up and down the road. Oh, we know. And you know what? That afternoon the kids go back, oh, sorry, W, we're late for school. Oh, we're so sorry. We broke down. We had a puncher when we went to put our spare on. It was nearly flat. Nobody come along to help us. We had to put windgrass in our tyres. And then we ran out of fuel. We had to walk the last 10k. We're sorry, W. Now, what schoolwork do we need to catch up on? And that was their story. That was what they're like. We go, if families go away, we're on the telephone, aren't we, yeah? Oh, where are you? What are you happening? What are you doing? No, they have this telepathy that we don't understand. I mean, I've been to law business, women's law business, and I've seen them sing in the spirits, which is their forefathers. And it used to scare the heck out of me because you'd sing them in and they'd say, W, sit real still now because they're coming. And I'd think, where are they coming? I can't see anything. And all of a sudden you'd see the grass part. As if people walk, I couldn't see anything. They could see them. And they weren't calling in evil spirits, they were calling in their forebears to protect them from the evil spirits. So it's a way of life that we find hard to understand. It's a way of life that we know little about. You know, we've worked with them, 20 years? I understand them less today than I thought I did when I first started working with them.
Okay.
Because they're so complex.
We watched the video. To be honest, on reflection, we saw it when it was done. We were part of it, but all very briefly. And there's kids running down the path, and we were in amongst them. And for some reason, it didn't show making tapping sticks. That was one of my groups. I've seen it in a slightly different light because part of it was cut out. And that part that was cut out, I think, allows that message, the message that remains, to be much more positive. We were disheartened to see the level of negativity in one section of the original SBS presentation, which was not necessary to be there, and I'm pleased that you didn't show it because it didn't add anything. It's true, they're saying that they're disadvantaged, but you know, the folk, they don't feel, this is my impression, they don't feel disadvantaged. They get on with their lives and they you know, live them as best they can.
They love their life, they love their community, don't they? They love their land. Their land is so important to them, it's everything. They don't care about if they've got, I mean, we had a beautiful Christian friend. Every community considers themselves Christian. Every community has a little church. It's kind of a little shack with a bit of metal over the roof, and sometimes the metal at the back if they're lucky, but mainly it's branches and that all over them. And in Soapy, the community that we worked in for 4 of the years, they had church nearly every night. And you know, they really believe in strong Christians, but not the way that we understand Christianity. I mean, they don't think smoking's a problem. They think, you know, getting drunk's not a problem. They don't like it, but I don't think it's a problem. They don't think it's what keeps them from God. But our friend Richard, I felt so bad because he lived in a little thing that would have been probably a shed about this square with all his family, okay? And he's a really dignified elder, and I said to him one day, I'm so sorry, Richard, that because when someone dies, that house can't be lived in, and they all move around every time, okay? They move to different houses. So there's always the person who died, their house is left empty for about 3 to 6 months, and then someone else, not so closely related, is allowed to move in. And I said, Richard, I'm so sorry that you've ended up with this, with no door, no windows, and just the dirt floor. And he said to me, W, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He said, this is my country, and I love it. And he said, you know what? When Jesus comes, I'm going to have the most amazing house, and it's going to have walls and doors. He said, I'm hoping heaven has walls and doors because I don't have them at the moment, so it'd be really nice to have them. So, you know, we talk about their disadvantage. It's their social relationships that are important. If you go there as a teacher, you have to be their friend. Not, you know, friend, buddy friend, but friendly in the way that you accept them, you acknowledge them, you listen to them, you're fair to them. And if you do those things, you've got the best friends ever. You can discipline them. You know, in the mainstream, when I've worked in mainstream and I worked in Caraba and I worked in the emotionally disturbed unit. And, you know, you got on the wrong side of those kids and it was really hard to get back in with them. Or even in the mainstream, the clever kids, you disciplined them for something or growled at them for not doing the homework or the behaviour in class. It takes you a while for them to forgive you and get up onto a level playing field to be able to deal with them. Not so Indigenous kids. You growl at them, and if they think you're fair, because when you growl at them, I don't say, you shouldn't have hit like that, don't do that again, that's really wrong. You say, why did you hit them? And then you ask the other person, and why did you do? And you might have to talk for an hour to get right back to what really, really started it. And if they see you working your way through, and you say, look, I'm sorry, you know what the rules are, this is what your punishment is going to be, that's all right. And a few minutes later, they're holding your hands and walking off with you, and they say, all over now, W. Or one girl, the whole time I'd growl at her, she'd hold me and say, but W, you love me, you know you love me, you love me. And no, it's really hard to be angry with someone that's just really walloped a little kid for no reason, saying she did it because the cat scratched her last night, so I had to punch him. You know, it's really hard. But when the little girl's saying, but I really love you, you know you love me, you know you love me.
I hope you're feeling very loved at the moment.
Getting back to disadvantage, there are disadvantages there, and it's real. Bev was talking about Richard living no dirt floor. We were at Soapy Ball, which is this one here, for 4 years. My teacher helper, Susan, amazing woman, she's 68 and still working. People think Aboriginals don't work. She's 68 and still working. But her home had no running water.
Or toilet.
No toilet or running water.
Nothing.
She would have to walk 100 odd metres down to a communal shower and a communal
outside one, not inside, just
a toilet. And the thing about that shower was halfway through, you know, like after a few years we were there, they had a little chip wood heater for to heat the water. That broke down. So she would have to have her showers in cold water.
Or at other people's houses after they had finished.
So, yep, housing is an issue. They've made more or less the decision that all of these homelands, they will repair homes, but they won't put in any new ones. They're putting in 15 new homes in El Para. They've already built 5. But you can see the dilemma, can't you? If they put 15 new homes in here and people start moving in from these other scattered homelands, what's going to happen to the viability of the little ones? And some have already, some that we haven't mentioned, one here is abandoned there. So if they centralise everything over time in Alpara, then the sort of delinquency and problems will come in.
Family fighting, family fighting.
Anyway, I don't know if there's any questions.
We had students that loved school so much in Utopia. We went to a school that started off that had 18 students. Within a year we had 42, we had the biggest of the schools. I had 3-year-olds to 7, 8-year-olds, and my husband had them up to year 5. Year 6 goes to high school to build up the high school numbers. Okay, in our classroom we had 2 families that would come in, they come from Rocket Range, and because they knew they didn't have the petrol to go backwards and forwards every day, the roads are really bad. You know, if you go out there and don't get a puncture, you do it really well. You've got really thick, good tyres on, most of theirs are nearly bald. So they would make a little yawl, they'd put up little branches to about this high, and probably about this long, and they'd sleep behind that. And that was where they'd stay. They'd arrive Monday morning, they'd go home on Thursday. Homeland schools, if you don't want to be in the classroom too long, go here. The homeland schools only teach to Friday, Thursday. Friday's their day off for planning and marking, and so they do 4 days of teaching. Okay? All the kids here, if they're at school, they get, how much is it? $948, that was 3 years ago, $948 per term per child that is at school to help them, to help the families, to feed them and clothe them and encourage them to educate, to be educated.
Oh, hang on.
Can I answer some of the questions on this?
Wait. Read the thing, the email that you got yesterday from Isaiah.
I'm not going to.
Now, the young chap that liked taking selfies, that had the sunglasses on and said he would never leave. He's now working in Alice Springs as a translator in the courts.
No, I'm not going to read it. But he's very educated for an Indigenous student.
Go on, tell him why he's at least.
He's going to be a dad, and he's so excited. And it's going to be tonight for sure. Well, that's been every night now for the last 2 weeks. And every day I get a picture of just the belly of his wife. I mean, you look and you think, here it is, what is that? Oh, it's the belly, and he's very excited about it. But he tells me everyone that he's going to make sure his kids go to school. He tells me every time they're going to be brought up as Christians to love Jesus, and he's going to make sure they don't break in and steal cars like most of his nieces and nephews do. So he tells me that. But we left Nunandarra. Yeah, we left Nunandarra land
2 minutes.
8 years ago, 9 years ago. We still get phone calls from those students. So if you work in homeland, remote, you'll have that the rest of your life. You'll have friends everywhere, and they'll ring you and contact you and tell you who's passed away and who's having a child or whatever. That's the relationship they make with you. Oh, W, you need to know, he's got a girlfriend now, all that type of thing.
Isaiah, just little bit background. Isaiah, he's had a tough time because two months before we got there, his father was swept away.
Yeah. What happened was there was the Sandover River is called Sandover because the river actually runs underneath the sand, and the only time it runs as a river is when there's flooding. Yeah, when it rises. But if you dig down about that deep, you'll hit water, and so the kangaroos do and all the animals do. The rivers were flooding. And that year, they hadn't flooded for 7 years, and in that year, they flooded 7 times in 12 months. And it comes very quickly down the river. It's very deep, it's very fast, and there's logs and all things. Some of Isaiah's dad's brothers went in for a swim, and they got into difficulty. So he jumped in, because he worked at the clinic, he felt obliged to help them, but he couldn't swim either. So he jumped in to save them, and all 3 of them drowned. Now, they found his 2 brothers' bodies, but they never found Isaiah's dad's body. He was never found.
Unfortunately, we're almost out of time. I would love a chance to ask
one last question.
No.
Sorry.
Is schooling free or is it?
Yes. No, it's free.
And they don't even pay for school camps, they don't have to raise anything. When we take them swimming, we provide the towels, we provide the uniforms to swim in, because they're not allowed to wear swimmers. That is one thing, if you work in these areas, you have to dress very carefully. Young girls, you can't have anything showing here, you can't have your arms showing there. Yet when they do business, you're topless. Okay? But in those times, you can't wear tight-fitting clothes. For men, they can be topless or whatever, it doesn't matter, but women have to dress appropriately. You can't wear red. Red is men's colour. School's free. Everything's free for them. We even give them spending money when we take them swimming.
And meals, breakfast.
Breakfast and lunch.
Just come back in again.
Cooked lunch.
I'm just curious to know, do you think free everything, as you're implying, is actually healthy in terms of welfare dependency?
There is dependency. You're quite right. It's a sort of a balancing act, isn't it? The sort of things that we provide free, like if we're going on an excursion, for example, all the food and all the expenses going to the swimming pool and all of that stuff. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't happen. They do get monies. We haven't even talked about.
You know, people complaining fuel. Oh, it's nearly $1.63 and might go up to $1.70. It's been $2.20 there for years. A litre.
Employment and people are being employed more and more.
At the school.
At the
school employs 50 Indigenous workers.
But a lot of people rely on the pension and the handouts. Passive welfare is not a good thing, but you've got to transition out of that slowly and in a considered manner.
Why do we feed them? Because if someone passes away, or there's anything special on, football's on, or someone has died, business is on, all the families come in, they bring nothing with them. And they'll eat everything and eat them out of house and home. So they might be there for 3 days. When they've gone, they've got nothing. Not till the next money comes in 2 weeks' time. So they're really hungry, and they do go out bushing off, and the kids are not at school, and you say, oh, where were you yesterday? Oh, we're hunting. Oh, you'll be really happy, W. We got 3 going, and we got an emu, we got a porcupine. It was wonderful. You know, so that kind of thing. So we know children can't learn if they're hungry, if they're tired and hungry. These kids, the nights for them are horrendous, because the dogs bark all night, literally all night. So, you know, kids get very little sleep. When football's on, we staff get very little sleep, because about 4:30 in the morning, the disco finishes, and then football starts at 9. So we get very little sleep. So we know how grumpy we get in that time. So you imagine living in a home. In any one of these homes, in any room, they might have 2, 3, 4 bedrooms. There can be up to 30 people living in those homes. There can be up to 10, 15 people living in the one bedroom. Mum, dad, all the kids, the aunties and uncles and cousins, all one bedroom. Where's your privacy? You don't have.
There's time for one more question if you don't have one. Okay, what I'm getting from both of you is that it's very rewarding work, but it's also very challenging as well. And sometimes, you know, there's the old saying, the worst of times become the best of times. It's the hard times that become the great times. And so maybe there's a little bit of that coming through in your presentation.
No,
as
that's absolutely right. And when you come into a situation like that, rather than focusing on all the problems, which are many, you focus on the individual, you're focusing on the kids, you're focusing on the families. And after a while, it's just the individual personal thing, and you forget. We see it, but we don't get anxious about it, because they are coping, as I said earlier, the best way they can. And so, yes, problems, we would do things quite differently, but they've got a lot to offer.
We would have people knocking on our door, and it would be grandmothers, and very upset because they hadn't eaten since the kids left school on Thursday. School starts tomorrow, Monday morning, and they know their kids are hungry and they're crying. So have we got anything we can share? And we always did. We're always giving food. And the grandmothers would say, it's not for us, Dobby. We promise we won't eat it, but do you have anything we could give the kids? You know, and I would make the deal, no, I won't give you something. If you can do this for me, or your kids can do this for me at school tomorrow, then I'll give you this for them, but this bit's for you. But they always had to do something. We went out on a Sunday to our school, the only staff that did. We went out there every Sunday, pretend to do cleaning, but all the kids would come in, even adults would come in and do jobs for us. And if they did that, we gave them sandwiches, we gave them fruit from our garden or whatever. So they never got anything for nothing, per se, from Allan and I. They always were given kind, and they prefer that. They don't want to be beholden to you. They want to keep their dignity.
Okay.
So
we do have to wrap up,
Yep.
and let our poor students disappear. This is going to sound like a very selfish question. Hopefully it's a short answer. There are a lot of people who say that it's fantastic for young teachers to go and do a stint in the bush, that it's a life-changing experience, and that it pays reasonably well in terms of
it's
the way
true,
the
no
government
rent,
looks after you.
no electricity, no water bills, it's all paid, covered for.
So accommodation.
Accommodation's free, they move you in and out, they fly you, every term end, even Alice Springs for us, that was so close because before our biggest centre was 1200k away. So, you know, that was when we were in WA. And everybody said, oh, this is the most isolated school, for goodness sake, it's only 250k, that's nothing. But they thought it was, so they gave us money every term end, 3 of the 4, to go and spend 3 nights in Alice Springs.
There are opportunities. There are absolutely opportunities, and
it is life-changing.
and I can recommend it. But of course, and Beth's right, there's free housing, free electricity, and you get a subsidy for isolation as well.
We got 20,000 extra
and so on.
living in
But
Warburton.
for young ones, they want to play their footy or they want to date and go surfing and stuff like that. So over the years we have had young ones come in real enthusiastic. After a couple of terms, or when they get cashed up, they go overseas or do something.
Can I say something?
Yeah, so it's good.
If you're going to work in a remote community as a young one, don't go in with preconceived ideas. Take things as they happen. Go with the flow kind of thing.
Slowly.
Don't stay more than 2 years, because Indigenous teaching in remote communities is not like teaching in mainstream, and you need to not learn those skills that you're going to need for mainstream, because mainstream kids are going to be a lot harder to work with ever than remote kids. So you need to pick your time, and 2 years, and then you go back into mainstream. Or the other way, like we did, do your mainstream, then go back and do your Indigenous.
Good advice. Thank you very much. It's been a very interesting presentation.